I would say you have these natural leadership skills, but what do you believe are the most important parts of making such a strong yet small, fully functioning team like that?
I think it's the trust. They will all joke with you about it. With us, it's baptism by fire. In the company, you are leading something. Like there's an effort that you are the person that's like the general on the front, and you have to report back to us.
Jon, we're here.
Yes, Pete.
Welcome to the Unbrandme podcast.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm genuinely humbled by the invitation. It's been a great pleasure getting to know you over the course of the last whatever number of months. And so I am very curious about how this is going to go. And I'm more anxious and excited and kind of oscillating between the two feelings than I have been about an interview in a very long time.
I'll take that as a compliment.
Longer than I can remember, for sure.
I'll take that as a compliment. I must say it. I am extremely honored to have the Jon Mallia in front of me, the podcast there right in front of me. So I feel like I'm being judged, and a lot of people are probably going to be judging us. But since this is our show, not yours, let me kick off with the intros.
Grill me.
So as we say at BRND WGN, better people make better brands. And better brands make a better world. You are definitely one of those better people who've been doing a lot and perfecting your craft over quite some time now to try and build this better world. I find it that in a lot of the stuff that you do, there is this strong will to try and improve things for the better. What's interesting, obviously, here is that most times we interview people who have built brands or have created new brands or are working for brands, but you are the brand that we are going to be discussing. You're most famous now for the Jon Mallia Podcast. And so
it presents its problems.
I'm sure it does. And I can't wait to get through and ask you those tough questions, in fact. There's a massive intro here because obviously you've given me the hard time of doing 10,000 different things in your life. So I'm going to have to read these. You're a creative. You're a musician. I remember you in the Nobling show 10 years ago. You used to organize your own events. Your first event was, and your first run-in with the police was at the humble age of 14. You organized an event at Tattinger's. You weren't even allowed in to go and see your own show, but it was a full show, no? I believe.
Yes, no, it was great. We had several hip hop artists from the time, it was in a very evolved scene. Several years my senior, who obviously I wanted to kind of impress, so they could let me into their little cult. Incidentally, we also had members of Flaminio Mafia there, but they were just like on holiday in Malta, heard about a hip-hop show at Tattinger's. So we wound up getting a small set from Flaminio Mafia, which at the time were a pretty big group from Rome. I got to dip my feet into the craft of persuading people to do something, which was turn up at the event and collaborate to make a fun and memorable evening. So
that's quite impressive at 14. You've taught prisoners and school children how to rap. You've worked with immigrants. Right. You're a writer and co-screenwriter, most notably for the Maltese movie Limestone Cowboy, which, sorry, hand on heart, I haven't watched yet. I know you've invited me to watch it. I actually went online to see if I can watch it. I can. Yes. So everybody, Vimeo, you can rent it for the weekend. Cacciatore for Love in Malta, which is probably what threw you on the more general public scene with having something to say. I used to remember really enjoying those. You worked as a real estate agent, which is notably...
All of this makes sense from my point of view.
I'm sure it does.
I'll try to pitch my reasons as best as I can. But look, every single one of those things, and from the most banal to perhaps the biggest failures, I did with a lot of commitment and conviction. And when you interface with anything in that way, with that level of intensity, you're bound to yield something. Now, you might not be, you should not perhaps be doing that thing for an extended period of time because there's opportunity cost. You could be doing other things. However, I've always kind of lived by this credo, not because anyone told me, it's just I'm that way inclined to really give anything I am participating in 110%. So I took the things that mattered to me and kind of arranged them in a way that eventually led to the next chapter in my life.
Well, I mean, you've had 152 chapters of the Jon Mallia podcast, which is well, probably by the time this comes out, it'll be 153 or 54. Which is, I mean, impressive in so many ways. 2.6 million views. You're a producer, presenter, moderator. Now there's Il Kazin, Il Patroni Estaso.
Yeah.
And to me, probably the one that excites me most is that you are, like me, a graduate of the University of Hard Knocks, which is probably one of the toughest universities.
Yeah.
You have such a public persona. And I'm sure there are many, many people out there who believe they know a Jon Mallia or have created their own version of the Jon Mallia persona in their own minds. Who would you say is Jon Mallia?
I think I'm a person that has a lot of empathy, but that's also, it kind of allows me to do the type of art that I do. And I'm also capable of fostering deep relationships with the people I care about. That empathy also creates a level of vulnerability that perhaps over time has cast over portions of my personality, parts that are a bit more suspicious, like maybe I less trusting, right? I think I'm...
In what way?
In the way that perhaps I've seen myself and I've seen members of my family be very open. Like, we're a very open family, just whether that's the way my father deals with creativity or the way that my mother just dealt with the household, just allowing anyone and sundry to
come here.
If you not just come here, but you could literally move and become a brother or a sister if you just requested it, right? That was that simple. And that obviously translated to myself, my sister also being kind of very open and well, you go out into the world and you're that open, there's going to be people out there that are going to be perceiving that level of openness, and perhaps they're a bit more Machiavellian than you, and you can get very kind of damaged by that. So now that I know that, the empathy serves me, and when I can put on the full volume, raise the volume to max on that serves me a lot. If I'm, writing a script and I want to empathize with this rotten character, but I want to see his point of view and I really want to feel for, I can really do that. But I also know that the knob sometimes need to be turned down to 2, so I can make clear, more chesic, more astute decisions, and then perhaps slowly but surely we will allow kind of that connection to establish itself over time. Which is why, bro, I really get along with you, because you, I just felt like there was immediately a lot of trust that was established, like, because you're one of those people that is like not just cool and not just cool and authentic and sincere, but you're also competent, and that's like the type of people I want to surround myself with. Anyway.
Thank you. Wow.
Okay.
I wasn't here asking for a compliment, but I'll definitely take that.
Yeah.
I think you spoke about empathy, and that's. So I've been listening to your podcast for the last 3 years. I can't say I've religiously listened to each and every one of them, but in every one that I've listened to, you really go in there with a lot of empathy. And there were moments where I've been listening to your show where I was wondering, wow, he's really getting in and deep and close with this person. And I think you use that empathy in a really strong way. So you make people really, really comfortable. And if there's one thing that I've always been impressed by, I was actually telling Chris, Chris from the office before I came here, I said, Jon is one of probably the most intelligent people I know. One of the people who knows and has such a great command of both the Maltese and the English language, who has studied so many different, forms of thinking, philosophies, and yet doesn't make me feel uncomfortable to be in the presence of. Now, I'm not somebody who's normally feels uncomfortable in the presence of anybody, and I feel very competent and comfortable having conversations with most people, but there is a certain level of in-depth knowledge that you really have, which to most people would probably be scary, but yet you go into it in such an intense, yet open and friendly manner, which I think allows people to get comfortable.
look, I don't know why I'm exactly like this way, because I do like to kind of create an environment where people are bringing the best out of themselves. Like, it really gives me a kick. Like, I think the one thing that I really enjoy about having a company is that I have employees, and that I feel that I'm mostly their kind of mentor, right? I've always had this kind of paternal role. Like, before I came here today, myself and Kylie were discussing my past in hip hop, because she saw Wu-Tang thing. And I remember a point in time, like I had formed a hip hop group, of course, like we were like 15 years old, and we wanted to kind of start performing at these events that we're organizing. But most of the people couldn't write rap, right? So I would sit down with, let's say, a group of 8, 10 boys, like barely could spell their names, some of them, and I'd sit down with them and like, okay, bro, what do you want to say? What do you want to say? No, there's something else you want to come on. That's what ODB from Brooklyn would say. What do you want to say? And I would sit down and we would write like whole songs together with people. And the kick of watching like the light bulb flick on for the people that I'm interfacing with, and then them being able to do it for themselves, that like development. I've always had, even when I was very young, for some reason, I've always had a very paternal role in all of the groups I frequented. And I remember being in Havana when I was 16, 17, and like this girl who was a singer at the time, and I was 17, she's like, because I really feel like you're my dad. I think she was older than me, So I have this kind of, I guess I love stories, right? And probably that gives me access to if I've helped you, now I'm part of that story, and maybe I can help even write that story. And I think that gives me a thrill in and of itself. I think also my mom's bred me to be helpful. I think there's also that. Yeah. So it's a mix of things.
Going back, I mean, what do you think were the key moments in life that got you here? Mm-hmm. And here, I'm talking about Jon Mallia running the most popular podcast in Malta, Jon Mallia running a team, Jon Mallia being the go-to person for a number of people seeking advice and thought leadership to a certain extent.
I think my upbringing has definitely had something to do with it. Very unorthodox upbringing, okay? We didn't have a nuclear family in the way most people understand it. My dad, look, there was a part of the family that I had to kind of reconcile and make peace with, which was my parents were living in a very conservative Malta. They were, both of them were free thinkers, and so they were counterculture. Mm-hmm. So counterculture to conservatism is generally postmodernism, especially at the time. So they had an issue with internalizing institution into their life. So the institution of fatherhood, of marriage, of all of these things. So obviously, when you're not like, they don't have like huge conviction about marriage, that's not going to serve you very well if preserving the marriage is what you're after, right? Marriage is an extremely difficult thing. Raising kids is an extremely difficult thing. So that presented its challenges, mm-hmm. Okay? But at the same time, with my mother just simply just allowing, whether that's migrants, people that have like come from broken families, people that are, maybe were a bit delinquent, to just all of a sudden move into my bedroom, share my Super Nintendo, share my wardrobe. And I really felt like everyone that came through that door was my sibling. So obviously, I think that's also, I think that fosters a certain amount of empathy, because there is no kind of boundary between myself and the person who's not my blood relative. Like, we're all brothers, like the way the Christians, you said, or like, you go on these Buddhist retreats and we're all brothers. No, I lived that day in, day out. I'd turn up at home after school, and this is your new brother, and his name is this, and this is where he goes to school, and now you're sharing everything. You don't know anything else about the world. Yeah. You assume that is the way the world is. So that made me very open to really connecting to people, and I think I have a capacity for connecting to people very quickly because I had to I had to do it. I had to adapt. So I think the upbringing had a lot to do with it. Plus my dad, for all of his defects and faults and whatever. Like my dad, I mean, I used to wake up and on a Sunday, and he's listening to, I don't know, The Marriage of Figaro, and he's painting. My dad is an incredible
I've seen some of his
painter.
work. It's impressive.
Jesus. Look, my dad is a great creative. So if you see his theater work and his paintings are phenomenal. And I grew up around that. Again, I thought that was what the world was, right? So I had this kind of socially, I had a household that was inclined to acclimate me to like my societal obligations. And then I had this crazy, or let's say very unique father that had, these aspirations to always improve his art. And he was always very, very keen on becoming more and more excellent. And I think those two things were tuned into one another. There was an absence from like having a connection with my dad. My dad was never kind of the father figure. I think we only established a paternal connection maybe in the last 10 years, which was cool. But then I had to fill in the void of the paternal archetype for me to aspire to. Like, what is the masculine ideal? And that was Hulk Hogan. Right, Hulk Hogan came into my life.
Hulk Hogan had to be mentioned there. I was doing my best to avoid that subject.
How can you? All roads lead to Hulk Hogan. So this quintessential, like Hulk Hogan is the quintessential. He's Jesus Christ on like heavy steroids.
For the Gen Zs and the Gen Alphas listening to this podcast,
in all of you right now.
Who the hell is Hulk Hogan?
Hulk Hogan was like the first superstar, internationally recognized wrestler. He's massive, massive stature. But what was great about Hulk Hogan is, so they got everything right with Hulk Hogan, right? Whoever crafted Hulk Hogan understood like how to create the perfect masculine archetype, and just ticks all the boxes. So Hulk Hogan is like this tall, blonde. So even his hair is blonde. It's like you're watching someone with a halo walk into the arena. His trunks bright yellow, and he was like very powerful and could destroy anyone on planet Earth, but he would only do it for good. So right before he goes into the ring, every time he takes his headband off, finds a child on the front row, puts the headband on the child, kisses the child. To me, I'm that child. That's what I'm saying. Oh, look at my dad, he's about to go, do the business. And then he's going on stage, rips the shirt. But even the song was, I wanna be an American. By the way, I still love the United States, despite all of its failings as of ever. But I love the American project. Sorry?
The American dream.
The American dream, the American concept, the American Constitution. I think those are all just fantastic pieces of human greatness. But Hulk Hogan was instantiated, personified the American hope, fight for the right of every man. Hey, let's go fight for my rights as well. This is amazing. I have Jesus that can bench 400 pounds. That's going to fight for my. So I wanted to be, an artistic, a creative Hulk Hogan that cared for my fellow man. I think that is where I was aiming. That's my childhood.
So if we draw up on that, and because what I'm seeing over here is you've got your mum who brought this kind of societal activism, if you wish, to being there to help those in need. Your real DNA father who was bringing that whole creative edge and creative rocket fuel, if you wish, to it. And then you've got your Hulk Hogan fighting for the rights of. Yeah. And so if you grab that triage, I mean, it really pushes that common thread, knowing everything you do today. So what would you say is your real purpose today in life, or as Wazer says it, what wakes you up in the morning?
Well, to be so it's very platitudinous, I guess, but it's like to be as true to myself as I can possibly be. So I know myself a lot. And my greatest achievement would be, well, to live every day according to what I know I should be investing my time in, and to continue to create a life for myself that is,
It's a tough question, Jon.
yes, look, okay, so maybe we should articulate what is a life that Jon wants. Right?
Okay.
So the life that Jon wants is, one, I want first and foremost my kids to be able to, to look up to me and say, and I want to be a model father.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't necessarily need to do everything like myself, but they need to have like kind of the comfort of knowing that, listen,
What would dad do?
Yeah, that's my dad, and my dad has always encouraged me. My dad's always been supportive. If I ever fall flat on my face, he's going to be there to pick me up, maybe slap me a bit, but also to kind of put me back on the right path. And that, the things that I make in the world, and maybe this is a bit vain, is, I want them to kind of regard, let's say, the podcast as something that has some sort of artistic merit and some sort of social merit and some sort of mediatic merit. So I do want them to have some
legacy.
Admiration,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'll be very open and transparent. I want my kids to have a level of admiration for their father, right? Okay.
Check, done.
There you go. So that's that therapy session off the list.
You're welcome.
You have that capacity. The other thing is that I know I have, like through being alive for 41 years, I know that I have a certain number of potentials that I've from time to time succeeded in activating, but I tend to feel like there's more in those avenues that I can explore. So I want to keep modeling my life. And so far I've done this pretty successfully in a way that everything that I do is activating one of those set of talents or set of innate capabilities that give me gratification, because I feel like, okay, look, I am of value to the world when I do this. And I like being of value to the world, and I like continuing to solve the puzzle of, let's say, my screenwriting, for example, mm-hmm. or producing media, or leading a team. So I want to just stay in those lanes, but then it also scares me that sometimes I think you need to kind of take a sudden turn that all of a sudden gives you a brand new perspective on all the things that you really care about. I think I want to remain as close to the things that I intend to achieve, but that kind of level of order mm-hmm. concerns me, that it might turn into ossification. So I need to have controlled chaos coming in, or maybe I just need some chaos to all of a sudden surprise me, so I can think in different ways about the things I care about.
It's interesting you say that, Jon, because it sounded like you're talking a lot about you being the main actor, obviously, in your own movie, which you're creating and you're writing as you go along. However, watching you as a spectator, I've seen you fully and truly come alive when you're trying to solve problems that many others can't. And I think you have this ability to not only see things in a very different way, but in a very objective way, but also to be able to bring people along with your natural leadership skills to come together to solve things which should be solved because it's the right thing to do. And I think that is interesting. I mean, your show, in my opinion, is also about holding up a mirror to Maltese society. And holding up a mirror that is always in search for more truths, but also to really take the time to listen to people's truth. A lot of the time, we see stuff that happens and we just jump to conclusions. We're by nature trying to create our own quick stories so that we understand them. But you take time to really go in depth into understanding what's behind the reasons that things have happened. So when you set up this podcast, what were you really trying to seek? What were you really trying to do?
So the intention was so there was an educational component to it, because I don't have a formal education. I actually sat down and kind of articulated these goals to create an informal university for myself.
There you
Very
go.
selfish, but
University of Hard Knocks.
kind of like force myself to learn, right? So if I'm going to sit down with like episode 2 or 3 was Professor Albert Bell about sociology, to learn about moral panic.
That was a good one.
But not only that, I could hopefully make it accessible enough that a broader cross-section of the public will start caring about these sociological ideas. So I think the other goal is to, have also, which is kind of nested in the other one, is to have a network of friends and a network of people that are now close to me that I respect, and that could kind of shed light on different portions of human existence that I perhaps have no visibility of. So I think that was also very valuable to me. I also thought that against the judgment of many, I felt like Malta was ripe for this shift in culture. I'm also a contrarian, so while I was working at Love in Malta and everyone wants to make everything shorter, I'm like, fuck that, 4 hours, bro. I'm gonna do this. So there was a bit this always wanting to test how true a narrative is, right? And what are the variables that make that narrative untrue. So that's the impish, devilish, more kind of cheeky side of myself. I also wanted to do something with Weza and with Mark. So I just wanted to do something fun with friends. I think all of those things. And yeah, but we didn't set out for it to be what it is at all. Like I wanted to do some interviews. I was like in the interim between having left Love in Malta and God knows I didn't know what. It was just like a big expansive Sanarao. And then it just took off in the way it did. In fact, many times the analogy for me is, I don't know if you ever watched The Little Rascals, the 1950s,
yes.
1960s sitcom about a bunch of these street urchins that just had this penchant of getting into trouble. And the theme song to it was the visuals of these kids that are riding a car down the hill. Like this go-kart, but they're building it at the same time. And it very much felt like myself and Wayside, Mark, we're just steamrolling down the hill. We're almost like inches away from just crashing this thing and destroying it. But somehow, generally Mark would come up with like a new little gadget and we would fix
it
things.
along the way.
Yeah. Before we knew it, then the whole community thing came along, and then we also had employees, and now we have a limited liability company. And
I want to talk to you about that, but before we get to that point, because 3 years of doing this, 48,000 views, your biggest show, 153 episodes. What have you learned in 3 years? What have you learned about the human psyche? What have you learned about Malta? What have you learned about podcasting?
I think that I learned not to jump the gun so much and accept people's faults, and just like how idiosyncratic people are. When you sit with certain characters, particularly, that you think you have you can't help it. I mean, you make an assessment before you sit in the room. You've created the model of the person you're about to speak to, and then that person will surprise you with little thoughts and little digressions and little life experiences that they share with you and what they've gleaned from that life experience. And that has taught me that how even more complicated than the human animal is than I actually thought it was, or that I ever took the time to understand and engage with. And that taught me how complicated I am. It taught me to look at all of the parts of myself. I think there was a time when I think we all go through it, where you want to believe a certain set of things about yourself, and those things about yourself are true. But there's also the parts of yourself that you are, but you don't want to accept. And by seeing like the whole gamut of personality of someone in front of you, I started to internalize, well, what is there's parts of me that I don't, like to see about myself, because what I'm doing is like in some instances I'm like trying to see her shadow, and if you were talking about in Jungian terms, I'm trying to see like, okay, you have this beautiful persona, it's really clean and shiny, but behind it, what is there, like what's the dirty stuff that maybe you don't want to share with us, or maybe that we can slowly pry out so we can get a fuller understanding of who you are. And so that made me do that for myself. And in fact, I have an email I have a Google document attached to that email. It's called Meeting My Shadow. And inside that, I write all the crap stuff about myself. It's really cathartic. Like if I do something terrible, like I snap at someone or something like that. When I have time, right? I don't necessarily, there was a time I was doing it 2-3 times a day, but now I do it less frequently, where I say, okay, you snapped at that person. Why did you snap at that person? And I will go through kind of which parts of my, which more unsavory parts of my personality were triggered. And I think it's by interfacing, I mean, it's no little experience to have sat down with someone like Lawrence Gonzi for 6 hours, with someone like Mark Camilleri, who has a very, very vast personality, for 11 hours, and all of these characters. They, if the podcast is a mirror to the country, they were also a mirror to me. So that I think what I learned is just how broad and nuanced the human personality is. And that's probably taught me how to make better podcasts, taught me how to write better, taught me how to deal with myself better, taught me how to be far less judgmental, and still know what my value structure is. However, understand, like I'm a bit more aware that, like right now I'm reading Steve Jobs, fantastic entrepreneur, but like being anywhere around that guy is impossible. So just an appreciation of how not monochromatic the human psyche is.
Surely in 150 to 153 episodes, there have been moments where you might have felt out of depth, out of your own, this is an uncomfortable position to be in. Can you recall any of those moments?
Yes. I had one that was just so hard for me to get over.
Are you going to tell?
Hopefully, let's not make this into a TikTok clip. So,
too late.
Here we go. So I had just, so I was feeling extremely comfortable behind that microphone.
Of course.
Like to the point where sometimes I was very underprepared, right? And I was just felt like I could do no wrong. And I could just walk into the podcast, maybe be like not even have notes. And so I walk into a podcast and it's Alfred Sant, right? Now, arrogant neophyte that I wound up realizing that I was. I didn't prepare all that much, thinking yeah, I can wing Alfred, son. What the hell? Like, this is going to be just another conversation. Anyway, so this guy, so first thing he does, he walks in, goes to my producer, and he goes in, Jon Mallia,
Yeah.
and I hear it. I'm like, this guy doesn't even know who I am. So, okay, cool. Walk in, and there's whiskey, and there's the Holy Mary on the table, and there's my God. And he's like, I can't have no whiskey on the table. I'm like, okay, let's remove the whiskey. So this guy is setting the parameters.
Yeah.
I'm not realizing it. Like, then I realized that almost all politicians do this, by the way, right? They want to set the parameters, but I didn't realize. They want to just reorganize the playing field in a way that says, okay, we're going to now play the game the way that I said it. Even over the phone, when I called him, he knew my back was against the wall, right? Because what happened was, it was the election. And obviously everyone from the Nationalist Party wanted to come because what did they have to lose? The Labour Party, no one wanted to come. So I had resolved to calling Alfred Sant. And he's like, but I don't want to get into controversies and things like that. And I already start losing ground to him, because I know that I want Alfred Sant to come on the podcast. I'm like, no, you know what, we'll talk about, kind of like the cultural component of like, how come you're a writer and also a politician, and like, how does that pan out in your head, you being someone as deep as that, and then being on stage with people just chanting, Viva Labour, how do those two things reconcile each other? So while I'm saying all of these, I'm actually articulating a contract of the way this conversation is going to go. So when he starts being aggressive with me, I'm one, unprepared for him to be, because I don't have the questions for it, I don't have the research for it. Two, I don't even know like what my stance should be, because I told him I wasn't going to kind of be confrontational. Mm-hmm. So now, the first 30 minutes of this conversation, I don't know where the hell I am. I really do not know where the hell I am, because I don't know where I should take the conversation. I don't know what my stance should be. But it was like, it took me weeks to recover from that conversation. And I would be like in restaurants having fun, and then maybe something would trigger the memory of feeling that helpless. And I would just be in a terrible mood for the rest of the evening. But it was by far the conversation I learned about the most. So then I had another politician that was kind of crafty, that was coming on the show. I was like, all right, now I learned. So first thing I did was tell him, bro, I'm going to ask you all the questions in the world. And it's going to be, and I'm not going to relent. And I'm going to keep asking until I get an answer. Yes. And then the guy, while we're there, tried to tell me like this sob story about his pet and things like that. And I'm realizing, okay, this guy is trying to soften my approach to him. So I pretended I was like completely, almost didn't hear him. And then, true to form, he told me, listen, so podcast starts at 4, let's say. And first he said, is my mind if I come at 5? And I'm like, no, we have to start at 4. On the day, calls Kylie, and he's like, no, first he writes to me, he's like, listen, I'm going to have to come at 5. I'm like, up to you, but there's 10 people waiting here, and you're going to make them wait an hour, Fidek. Sure enough, he comes at 4:30. But in those 30 minutes, anka biex nurieħli, I'm totally relaxed. I fell asleep. So I pulled out of bed here. I fight back. I closed my eyes. By the way, I'm a black belt 7 done in sleeping. I can nap. Like as the volcano erupts, I can have a siesta. And so I just slept, and then he just walked in. I'm like, oh, bonjour. Oh, we do it. And then once I knew what the parameters were, then I could fire. And then I could really kind of, I was exceedingly comfortable. I could make jokes. I could be difficult. I had all my research was up to date. But failure and that terrible feeling made me reorganize myself in that way. I don't want to go through that failure again. It really felt like I was getting punched in the face for 30 minutes and no one could do anything to make it stop. Because my team was inexperienced, so they couldn't like throw a prompt up. And I wasn't like quick enough to think, oh, you know what, I have to go to the toilet. Okay, John, I nothing, you know.
You're totally out of your depth, yeah.
Yeah, and Alfred Sant is such a particular character. I should have at least watched other questions. And I spoke to other interviewers that interviewed Sant, and a few of them had that experience where he is just a master of controlling the pace of the conversation. So he'll start talking to you about things that he wants to talk to you about. Then you ask a question and he goes, no. And I can look past you. Like, but no, what do you mean no? It's like, but what, why? And then he'll throw it back at you, go, but you don't have to substantiate that question. And the idiot, rather than going, no, you're here to answer my questions. I go, well, let me tell you, because I asked the question and now
so who's playing tennis
I'm giving
here?
him the rationale of why I thought of asking him the question in the first place. What? You know? So now I say it actually quite a lot now on my podcast. Hey, bro, I'm the one asking the questions.
I've heard that
I say
before,
it beneath, you know, and most of the time it is like that. But yeah, that was definitely the hardest.
So lesson learned.
Yeah, 100%.
What's interesting about your podcast is that you have a huge team now of, you are a company, you have a bunch of professionals working with you. And I've seen a bit of the action that goes on behind the scenes and I can see the trust that you have in your people.
Yes.
You've come to that. I mean, that wasn't by accident. You obviously, I would say you have these natural leadership skills, but what is it that has got that team to where they are today? What do you believe are the most important parts of making such a strong, yet small, fully functioning team like that?
I think it's the trust. I mean, they will all joke with you about it. With us, it's baptism by fire. I only think of my team as leaders. I don't think we don't have people, we don't have followers in the company. If you are in the company, you are leading something. Like there's an effort that you are the person that's like the general on the front, and you have to report back to us. I mean, I just recently employed someone 2 days ago, 3 days ago, and we had this morning powwow, you know, as you do, and I said, okay, so okay, you what are you doing? And he's like, whatever you guys tell me. Like, wrong. Wrong, my friend. Absolutely wrong. No, you have to, and then I pulled him aside. I didn't like embarrass him or try to kind of in any way demean him. But I set him aside. I said, listen, no, here we are, like we have a company of shepherds, not sheep. So you are the person that is leading that effort. You have to come back to me. I said, obviously, I have a lot more experience than you, and I would probably do a better job than you're going to probably do for a while. But you're the commando that's leading this charge. I don't know if commandos lead the charge, but that's what I said. The analogy, sometimes I make war analogies. I have no idea what they are, but metaphorically, we get the picture. So he tells me he internalizes it by like lunch. I returned to the office before I came here, and he's now articulating a clear path forward. He's leading, and I don't think. Look, I'm not going to say this inane thing that anyone can do anything they want. There are some people that will sink. There are some people that will swim. There are some people that it's the right time in their life for them to swim. And maybe if I met them a year earlier, it would not be the right time in their life. So there has to be a lot of, I give them a lot of trust, which invariably winds up in them giving me a lot of trust. So when I say, listen, if I told you that you could organize this a conference, event, whatever it is, by yourself, it's because I've made the calculation in my head. I saw what your skill set is. I know it's going to push you, and I know at some point it's going to look like this is impossible. But you're gonna come out the other side successful. And if you're almost successful and you're not, there's always us to back you up. Don't call us in to back you up for no reason whatsoever. However, I really have a lot of trust that you can deliver. And that is like the miracles that does. Like 9 out of, I would say almost 9.5 out of 10 times. People watch the exponential growth of the people that have been working with the company has been remarkable, and it's contributed to the growth of the company itself and the content that we do.
Yeah, you're very right. Leadership 101. I should remind myself this.
Which is?
This whole point, that you need to see, leadership skills in others and see them to their full potential as opposed to who they are right now, but rather see them as who and what they can achieve. Because it's critical.
Yeah, and for me it's laughable, like when they start imposing these limitations on themselves. I'm like, this is really funny, guys.
It's limiting conversation.
Yeah. Because I know there's got to be a point where the cocoon is just going to break, and you're just going to metamorphosize into the next phase of who you are as a professional or an artist or a creative or whatever. And you just can't see it right now because it's dark in that cocoon. But from the outside perspective, I can tell you are going to deliver. And I've been, not generally, I've been always right with this team.
Fantastic. Besides leading a team, you also have a number of followers and a strong community on Patreon, which is unlike a lot of other, podcasts, or unlike a lot of other, shows. And that is loyalty or brand loyalty, at its best. Why do you believe so many people are following you and are happy to contribute and pay for something which essentially they can enjoy for free?
Yeah. I think there is an aspect which is just a phenomenon of the society we are living in this current epoch, right? Which is that life has become more atomized and more individualistic, and there are certain components which are great because you get to be more of yourself. The church is interpressing you and telling you not to wear miniskirts and bikinis, but then there is the pendulum does tend to many times swing too far the other way, and the mantra of individualism, the iPhone, the My Coke, and all of that can only take you as far as, and it can't transcend your biology. And as a human being, you are a primate that is bound to want to make social bonds,
connections, and
social connections. And the way that, and I think the foremost way that we do that as human beings is by bonding over values. And because our values are very clear, as a podcast, as a brand, as a team, and as a community, and people know that if they have those set of values or many of those values, they know where to come.
Yeah, John, but I mean, you've explained Society 101. That's great. And that's why there are these communities. But you haven't explained to me why you think they're following you. And I'm going to just push this question a little bit further, because I've been in your presence and you've always been a phone call away of some really extremely intelligent person or some big expert who can solve a problem for you there and then.
Yeah.
And I also see myself, I get a lot of calls throughout the day and I don't answer most of them. And I don't respond to a lot of them. I'm always very happy to help and support our clients and our close community, but I won't pick up any random.
Yeah.
And yet you managed to give me a call and I stop whatever I'm doing to see if I can help John out with whatever problem now he's decided that's important to solve. What is it about you that makes people want to help?
This is going to be very hard for me to articulate while trying to do the balancing act of not sounding pompous, I guess. I guess the word is pompous, which is I really feel like the mission of what I'm doing is I genuinely think that I'm trying to make somehow society a little better. And I think giving people the opportunity to be part of that mission is something exciting, especially when it's done with a group of people that are competent and not perhaps like too catastrophic about everything, and perhaps a little optimistic and can tell a joke, and and I think the reason that people kind of will take my call is because and I've been told this, when I call someone and I ask, bro, I have this problem. How do I fix it? So one time we wanted to understand our audience more. So there was a guy who's in my Patreon, and I said, how am I going to do this? And so he did, a survey for me, statistics, et cetera, et cetera. And I took that data, I sat down with it for a day, and I implemented almost everything. So it's not, I think people like to also know that if they are going to give me their time,
You're not
it's going to
wasting
translate
it.
into action. And it's action that is a net positive for society in myriad ways. It could be just more entertaining, or give you a better sense of community, or it could be by explaining certain things to the public that the public needs to hear. So I think it's a mix of those. It's like action, with the chance to be part of a team that is trying to be a net positive to society, and also because when I talk to people like yourself, and if we were having a discussion and you said, my problem is it's the issue X. Even if I didn't know anything about issue X, I would try just automatically to start asking you the questions that would lead to us uncovering the mystery of
X.
How to resolve X, right? And that I think all of that together makes for me. I have a surprising amount of access. You're right.
You do.
Really,
And I think it's, if you don't mind me interrupting, I think it comes down back to the Hulk Hogan moment where you are actually fighting for what's right, and you give people hope that things can actually be fixed, and they will be fixed. And I think that is why when Jon calls me, I pick the phone up and say, you know what, this is a call worth taking, and this is a cause probably worth helping.
And obviously, once you surround yourself with, so obviously then being effective, so being perceived as effective becomes easier once you have an unlimited bank of consultants that can help you to reorganize your strategy to get to the objective. So then it becomes, an upward spiraling feedback loop. So that also needs to be taken into account, that there is an exponential component to that.
Jon, I wish this was one of your podcasts and I had another 3 hours left, but sadly it's not.
Likewise.
And we're getting close to the end. I was going to tap into Kazin and why that's airing on Talkies and how you're getting, some of the best brains to debate some really interesting stuff. And there I gave you a plug. You're welcome.
You came to do one of the events. That's the first time
I did. Exactly. I really enjoyed that. And I enjoyed it. There was Arnold Cassola who was the person who stuck out most to me at that point in time. He really struck me as a really interesting character. And you gave space to people to talk in a way which they could actually be heard, and not in this classic debating style, which is no debate, but it's just people shouting on top of each other, which as Mediterraneans doesn't help us, I suppose. And I think there is a bigger need for this. One of the things which strikes me as really important is that, especially in this day and age, and this has got nothing to do with talk, is with Kazin, is you hold the importance of working towards improving mental health, specifically within the male community, as something which is really important. And we're also extremely digitally connected, yet there's so much loneliness in this world. And just before we go off, I wonder whether there's something which you want to strongly say out there, to people who are maybe in a situation where they're passing through tough times. What is it that they should be reaching out to? What should they be doing? You're very open about your own struggles. Even in this conversation now, you've been extremely open. If only everybody had this openness. What is it, you think, that it's causing so much strife?
I can't put my finger on it for everyone, right? So I can give you the perspective of what I was enduring and how it got phenomenally better for me over time. And I think it's, first of all, the biggest thing for me was that I accepted that I had the power to do it. I had the agency. I needed to stop blaming things that happened to me in my youth, maybe things to do with the state, the community, the government, my boss, my girlfriend, No. Everything is my responsibility. You're making all of these choices, right? you don't like what's happening with the state, move to another country. Don't like what's happening with your girlfriend, break up with her. Or have a chat, have an adult chat, and be brave and be vulnerable, and show that there is parts of you that you're not very proud of and that you want to do better, but and have those difficult conversations, right? So when everything became ultimately my responsibility and my obligation to make better, and then acting in the world in the way that is what earlier you mentioned, like the protagonist of your own movie. That I had the capacity to do it. I failed a few times, many times.
Like we all do.
And like the Alfred Son thing, huge lesson. However, once I internalized that you are the master of your destiny, and the thing is that these phrases, these maxims float around Facebook, and you see like the entirely the wrong people posting them sometimes, or thinking like, okay, maybe I shouldn't say it because it's a bit flat and vacuous. But if you internalize the thought that ultimately you are responsible to yourself, I think that is a big thing. I think the other thing is to accept that you are a human being, and human beings have a certain number of needs. And I think if you're like me, you're very like rational and want logical answers. And I think what really helped me was things like understanding Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So there was a point where I was, for example, very close to becoming what Sam Harris calls the victim of the Dharma, which is basically I wanted to be enlightened before I had 100 euros in my bank account. Like I needed to. There are certain things that as a human being you must be able to take care of, and you must there are certain needs that you have to address, and slowly but surely you build one thing on top of the other. I think that in general, not running before I can crawl, that's helped me a lot. Therapy has helped me a lot. And a big thing, it's okay, if you're listening and you have ADHD, there's nothing better than meditation that you could be doing for yourself right now. Because when I discovered meditation, before you asked me what was a turning point in your life, there was a day when I had my issues with addictions, and there was one day when I had enough. One day when I said, that's it. My mother can't suffer anymore. I cannot be beholden to this obscure monster that just decides what I'm going to do next. I have to sort this out. I have to figure it out. So I went on YouTube, and I literally just started watching every video about meditation and doing it. So I did Zen meditation, pacing meditation, this meditation, the other. And I think I spent like a good 6 hours just doing it, like really doing it. And by the end of it, I felt something in my brain I'd never felt before. I'd never felt it, either through relationships or through narcotics. I felt like a calm in my head that was completely alien to me. I didn't know I could have a thought and not act on that thought. What? Mush everything, mush every impulse you have to pursue. And obviously that leads to getting into trouble or not getting things done, or just being completely overwhelmed by things, because if you're trying to compute numerous things at one go rather than focusing. So once I discovered meditation and I could look at thoughts as objects for me to decide whether or not I should pursue, engage, accomplish, or otherwise, that was really revolutionary, and it made me a lot happier. And in fact, in my company, it's one of the things that is one of the things
Sacred.
that we completely is kind of a cardinal rule. If we're talking about Pete's podcast now, there's no point of you telling me, listen, we need to pay the rent. We're going to get to there. Just put it on the list, and we're going to talk about it. I think Elon Musk is the same, and the one thing that I taught my daughter. One thing I hope I taught a few. but one of the first things I taught her to say is attention is, and she would say everything. So paying
That's a good
attention
one.
is huge.
Pay attention. John, last question.
Yes, sir.
The soundtrack to your life. What's the song?
So you warned me you're going to ask
I
this.
sure did.
But then you asked me a whole bunch of other questions, so I didn't have time to process.
What's playing in your head right now?
Well, there's numerous. So recently I had a dream about dilated peoples. I don't know if you know dilated peoples. They had a song, when worst comes to worst, my people come first. I just have this urge to be with my peoples. I don't know what that is. I don't know where that comes from. But even saying something like that.
Sounds adequate.
Yeah. But then there's my family as well. So I don't know.
I guess we're going to have a compilation.
There's but I should be able to articulate one song.
I'll be asking you about this question maybe next time we meet.
Yeah, maybe I will
Maybe
post
you need to
this
write the
podcast
song.
and say I know the song. Maybe I'll have the answer. I'll have the answer by then.
There you go. I look forward to that. John, it's been an absolute privilege and genuine pleasure to have you on this podcast. I really
It's
enjoyed
been a
it.
pleasure getting to know you, Pete. You're one of a kind. You're like the Buddha of Maltese marketing.
Wow. Thank you very much. It means a lot to me. Cheers, John.
Absolute pleasure, brother.
Thanks.
Absolute pleasure. Cheers.